Hey, if you're a returning viewer, I would love if you could hit that sub button for me. Over 50% of you guys are not subscribed, so if you could tap that, that'd be great. Also, check out the Twitch if you're into that. I knew it was not going to take long for me to make this video, but we have entered two very strange metas in Dead by Daylight. I touched on them last video, but we're going to go into more depth this video. Those two metas being a killer meta and a survivor meta, of course. The killer side, of course, being the silent skill check meta, and the survivor side, of course, being the perma-injured meta. If you're any kind of grimy gamer such as myself, then you will have seen both of these so much by now. The silent skill check meta, of course, branches from CM9I's Skull Merchant build. What we thought was going to be a one-off, funny build done by a casual is now one of the most common builds I see in this game. Skull Merchant's pick rate has more than doubled since this build became popular, and she right now currently holds the highest kill rate of any killer in the entire game, as per Nightlight. The survivor side meta, being the perma-injured meta, has been around for a long time, but it's just stronger than it's ever been, and it brings up the question if haste should be stackable. We're going to go ahead and jump into the killer side of things first. The silent skill check build is actually quite simple. As shown on the screen, there's a certain add-on called the shotgun speaker that allows this to be possible. Following the shotgun speaker, you can go ahead and use this if you want to perfectly replicate CM9I's build, which is how this build came about. However, obviously, it can be switched around with other gen kicks. I've already made an entire video about the gen kick meta, so if you'd like to watch that, go ahead and click that top right corner. But hey, don't leave yet. I'm not done with this video. Have some respect. As always, I am going to try to give my opinions on these metas, and I will keep it as neutral as I possibly can. The one thing I've recognized in my comments that you guys enjoy out of my videos is the fact that if I am a little biased on one side, I'll try my best to counteract the bias with a bias on the other side, to keep things nice and neutral. I also have quite a few people sobbing and complaining in my comments as well. However, I read through a full hate comment a couple days ago, and it started with flashlights should be removed from Dead by Daylight to balance things because they have no counterplay. And that went ahead and let me know how stupid the people commenting hate are. Anyways, let's keep going with this meta. Now, like I just mentioned, this is the standard. It's what popularized this build. Now, has this build probably been done before CM9I? Yeah, but he is what popularized it. This build allowed for a casual player listening to music to hold the best Survivor 4 stack in the world, Team Eternal, hostage for 53 fucking minutes. To put very simply, this build removes any skill gap between a bad killer and good survivors. This not only reignited the gen kick era of things again on other killers, but it also made Skull Merchant a very viable pick for people that are, you know, ass. And before you stop and say, Dom, you're being very biased right now. I'm not. Let me explain. The only reason this build is viable is because it eliminates chase as a whole. The killer's objective is survivors, not generators. All this does is remove the killer's objective in an effort to bore the survivors down to insanity until they give up. So yes, this build is great if you're ass. It has no other use past that. And if you're here to make some overused joke about how it's playing chess on Skull Merchant, blah, 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 congrats, you have no personality. Anyways, let's continue on. Funny enough about this whole thing is almost 2 years ago, I said Oppression had the most potential to be a lethal perk if used right in a 3-gen situation. Oppression literally applies to 3 gens. It has 3-gen right there in the description. And here we are, 2 years later, I was right. God, I love being right. It feels so good. Anyways, I don't think Oppression is broken or anything, but I do think it's a really unhealthy perk. And I just think they could rework it in some way to have the same effect without being a literal perfect recipe for a 3-gen. It could, you know, cause more regression if they miss the skill check, but then also deactivate when there's 1 gen left. I think that would be fair. Maybe it only applies to 2 gens, but the silent skill check is base kit instead of only shotgun speaker. Something like that. Give it a little touch of power and then remove the 3-gen capability, and you're golden. Now, let's go ahead and move on, since we're about halfway through this video, to the survivor side of things. I am going to tell you now, this definitely is more problematic than the killer side. This brings up the entire concept of haste stacking, as well as this game going from hide and seek to tag. And I want to dive into that in more detail. Again, I have already brought this up in a previous video, but I only barely touched on it as a supporting point. So maybe when you're done with this video, go watch my previous video and they kind of work in tandem. So what exactly is the perma injured build? This one is definitely a lot more customizable than the other build I was talking about, because the other build is from a killer that came out this year and a specific add-on she had, or 2 specific add-ons she had, I suppose. And what I'm about to talk about for Survivor has been a problem for many years. There are a lot of perks on Survivor's side that benefit you simply for being injured. The most popular, of course, being, say it with me, Dead Hard, which controlled this game up until this year pretty much. Do I think Dead Hard was too harshly nerfed? Yes, I think they should have stuck to their original idea where you get it back every time you safely unhook a survivor, instead of only having it twice a trial. Because literally 1 ping diff and you're fucked. Anyways, this is not a video about Dead Hard, so let's keep going. Perks like Resilience buffing every single action by 9% strictly for you being injured, made for this benefiting you 3% haste simply by being injured, as well as having a very scuffed secondary. Adrenaline's usage has actually gone down for the first time in God knows how long, because made for this hope is stronger. So people are now incentivized to be injured even in endgame, where such a strong and such a common perk like adrenaline is now seen less and less. Now, is that a good thing? Probably in some people's eyes. I'm sure a lot of people are sick of being in a chase and the survivor insta-heals and has a speed boost because of adrenaline. However, this perma-injured meta is not good for the game. Having a plot twist in your back pocket so you just go dead silent and insta-heal whenever you're done having your fun with these haste perks, and then walking out the exit gate scot-free, allowing for more split pressure on gens with a 9% haste, which is stronger than Quick Gambit, which is a literal gen perk. By the way, Quick Gambit desperately needs a buff or a rework. That perk is useless. Would you rather take the risk of running a chase by a gen that's being worked on for an 8% speed boost, or would you rather just go get injured and then hop on a gen for a 9% speed boost to your gen repairs? It's one thing to have a perk fall into the background for being a little silly or a little useless or a little niche, but it's a whole nother thing to have a perk fall into the background because there's just a better version of it already. To put very simply, and if you take anything from this meta, take this. Survivors are more incentivized to be injured than they are to be healed. This has caused for fewer heals ever since the heal nerfs, and more gen rushing ever since as well. And again, as I've said in 3 videos now, survivors desperately need a secondary objective in order to maybe take that pressure off of gen rushing. 3 gens popping in 4 minutes isn't normal, but in 2023 Dead by Daylight, it is. Now let's go on to my following point, which was hide and go seek versus tag. As mentioned in my previous video, I said that Dead by Daylight went from hide and seek to tag. Lockers have gone from a hiding spot to an interactable that can buff survivors, such as flashbangs, inner strength, or built to last. And as survivors, we've slowly evolved from hiding or making space on the killer when we hear them coming to running at the killer. In this current phase of Dead by Daylight, survivors, including myself, are more incentivized to go take a hit, gen rush, and then maybe cleanse a totem and use inner strength, than they are to take a hit and heal. And that's just if they even want to be healed, because let's say they're running made for this hope. Do you want to be a 110 killer as a survivor? All right, don't heal then. Now, I will say one thing on the survivor's behalf of this meta, and one thing that's not so harmful about it. It has actually plummeted the use of exhaustions. Some people might run an exhaustion with Vigil and then Resilience made for this or made for this hope, but a lot of people want to take off that exhaustion to make sure they consistently have made for this. And as I said before, a lot of people stopped running Adrenaline, which is an insta-heal plus haste perk, in order to run an injured build and have that hyperspeed, that satisfying hyperspeed in endgame. And like I said, they can either plot twist, they can inner strength or inner healing, whatever you want to call it, and go out the exit gate and take that hit on the way out once they've had their fun bullying the killer. And again, when I say they, I really do mean myself. You cannot blame the player base for running something that's strong. You can blame the devs for allowing that to be in the game. It is not my fault nor anyone else's fault that we're running Resilience, made for this, and hope. It's the dev's fault to allow haste stacking, which brings me to my final point. It's as simple as this. Haste should only apply the strongest amount to you. So if I'm running made for this hope, and endgame starts, and hope kicks in, then made for this should shut off. And instead of going to 10% haste, I go to 7, which is just hope. If I'm running Blood Pact Dark Theory hope, then still only hope should apply. It really is that simple. It really, really is. This would stop incentivizing staying perma-injured as much because survivors wouldn't be on skates anymore, moving at light speed. And another thing I want to call back to about that Skull Merchant build, that is another case of the devs being at fault. Do not blame the people running that build. I mean, yeah, they're kind of lame, and just like the people running endgame haste builds are lame, including myself. But it's not their fault. It's the devs' fault for it being in the game. So before you have this discussion in my comments about what's right and what's wrong, or how you feel about these builds, honestly, please remember that the people running them are not at fault. The devs are. Anyways, go ahead and slide on down to those comments. Tell me what you think about these metas or these builds. Tell me if you've seen them a lot, and just, yeah, let me know your thoughts. I'll see you in the next one.